We're going to spend a significant portion of the time in this course in Google Chrome, in part because it's the most ubiquitous browser on the web today, and also because it has some really neat tools to make hacking ourselves very easy. Many of the features we're going to use are probably quite familiar to you, so I'm going to run through them all pretty quickly, just to make sure that we're all on the same wavelength. So for example, one of the things we're often going to do is inspect the source code. Now we can either right-click somewhere on the page and view page source, or sometimes you'll see me use the shortcut key of Control-U. The other thing we're often going to do is drop into Incognito Mode. So up to the menu, and then New Incognito Window. Control-Shift-N will do the same thing. Now the point of incognito is that once we go into this mode, and you'll see we get the little spy up in the top left hand corner of the browser, all the browser history, the cookies, the cache, anything else that was already in the browser is discarded, so we have a completely clean slate. So I'm going to use this at times where I don't want to bring forward any dependencies that we've already set up in the browser. And that particularly means things like cookies. The other thing that we're going to use quite extensively is the Chrome developer tools, and we can jump into that by pressing F12. Now there's a lot of stuff that goes on in the developer tools, so I'm just going to show you the ones we'll most commonly use. We're going to be using the elements quite a bit. We want to be able to look through the structure of the page, and you'll see that as I highlight areas of the page, in this bottom left hand panel with the HTML, you'll see it reflected on the screen. The other thing we can always do is just right click on an element and go down to Inspect Element, and it will then highlight the code in this Elements tab. This is really neat, not just for inspecting security positions, but in day-to-day development. Next up we have the Resources tab, and the Resources tab includes all sorts of different assets that have been loaded or state that has been set as part of the execution of the web page. We're going to particularly focus on cookies. And what you'll see in this section is each cookie that is valid for this website. We'll get a name, a value, a domain, and we're also going to be looking at the path, the expiry date of the cookie, and those two columns on the right, the HTTP column and the secure column. All of these are particularly important throughout the duration of this course. The other thing we're going to use quite extensively is the Network tab. And what we'll find on the Network tab is all of the requests that the browser has issued. So let me show you what I mean by that. I'm going to go up to the leaderboard, and what you can now see down in this Network tab is a whole bunch of requests. If we pick, say, the first request, which was the request for the HTML page /supercar/leaderboard, we'll see that we've got things like the method. So is it a get or is it a post? The HTTP status, this was 200 OK. We didn't get, say, a 404 not found, or an internal server error, or a redirect, or any of the other sort of status codes that we'll see throughout this course. The other columns are pretty self-explanatory. What we're often going to do though is drill down into a request, and we're going to look at things like the headers. Now this is another area where we're going to spend a significant amount of time in this course, and this is actually a really valuable view of what's going on. So we're seeing things like the URL that was requested and the method that was used, and this becomes particularly useful when we look at asynchronous requests where we're not actually seeing the URL in the browser, it's just JavaScript going off and hitting an API somewhere. We're going to look a lot at request headers, so particularly things like cookies. Now when we make a post request, we're also going to see a request body, which has each of the form fields and values in it. Scroll down a little bit further and we get things like response headers. So this is what the server is sending back to us above and beyond the HTML you see rendered in the browser. So we'll see things like the application server that's being used. All of this is very useful. We're also going to be taking a look at some sub-tabs, such as things like the response, which will give us the body of what comes back from the server, as well as the cookies. So these are the cookies that were sent with this request and any cookies that were set in the response. So if it's not already, this is all going to become very, very familiar to you throughout the execution of this course. Now there's just one more thing I'm going to show you with Chrome, And I'm just going to jump up to the menu, drop down to Tools, and go over to Extensions. We are going to be using an extension called Edit This Cookie. And you can find that by getting more extensions and just searching for Edit, and there it is right at the top. Edit This Cookie. So this is a free extension that we're going to use to, as the name suggests, actually edit this cookie. So do make sure you add that if you want to follow through the steps of this course. So that's how we're going to be using Google Chrome.